several years ago on a fishing trip in Canada with a very large creature that I cannot identify, and believe me, I've seen about everything there is to see as far as animals and wildlife, sounds, noises, interesting. I didn't get an actual visual of him, but the sound was very unique, and it was a very eerie feeling just a few minutes before, which as a hunter, outdoorsman, some places, I don't get it as much in Colorado or the lower 48 as I get it when I'm in Alaska, knowing that I'm in terrain or territory where I could be the prey, and instead of being the predator, and different places like that. But definitely this trip was unique. We flew back in on a float plane to a place called File Lake, and probably about 2.5 hours from Winnipeg. Kind of not sure the direction anymore. If it was, I know it was north-ish, but they had built a cabin there a few years earlier. They do a lot of fishing stuff out of there, and that's what we were there for. Early in the year, it was May. We were gone in for walleye and lake trout, and have a good time catching some of those northern fish. And a couple of gentlemen from the church that I was with, there was 4 of us all together, one of them a doctor, John, what was he? He's an air marshal, and then the other gentleman, Dave, owned an investment firm type thing. All outdoorsmen, all hunters, fishermen. And Dave and I happened to team up that day, and we had taken a boat across this one lake, got to this, what they call a portage, and it took us about 20 minutes to walk to this other lake, which I'm not sure the name of right now off the top of my head, but there was a dock and boats and fuel, everything sitting there waiting for us. They don't worry about anybody stealing them. There is nobody around up there. I mean, we are, miles and miles from anyone. When it takes that long to fly in by float plane, no roads, no trails, no nothing. We're in the remote wilderness. So we get the boat, Dave's at the helm, and off he goes. We take off down these lakes are so huge, you cannot see the other shore. You'd swear you're on the Great Lakes or you're on the ocean. They are massive, massive lakes. And it's pretty late in the evening. It's probably about 8 o'clock-ish. And, of course, it doesn't get dark till about midnight that time of year. And we had probably been a good 45 minutes cruising along the shorelines, looking for some place that might be, decent to catch. And all of a sudden there's this little, opens up into what I call a cove, a little estuary type thing. And so we pull in there, he cuts the motor and just kind of trolls in real slow. And it's just pristine. It's just beautiful, beautiful. Probably about 1.5, maybe 2 acres, the size of this little cove here, surrounded by trees except for where we entered in off the lake. And Dave said, and I've never fished walleye, anything like that in my life. I'm a trout guy, born and raised Colorado, and so this was new to me, and so I'm listening to him and getting as much information as I can. He goes, we'll just kind of just troll real slow, throw your jig out there and put a little minnow on it, and we'll see what happens. We just start the first loop. We come around, and I go, no, got one. So he kills the motor, and I reel in a nice walleye. And he's like, okay, let's do that again. So every time we did that, we'd make that loop, boom, we'd nail another one. About the 3rd time that happened, we're just sitting there. We just kind of stop and we're both Christian men. We both have a tremendous love for the Lord and all His creation. And I'll tell you, I was telling Glenn that I invented a word. I call it awesomenticity. And it's my word, so anybody else can use it, but no, it's my word. It's just something that's beyond words of describing something that's amazing and beautiful and serene. And yet, here we are sitting there just kind of smiling and talking just normal tone of voice, And it's getting later. It's probably close to 10 o'clock, 10:30 by now. And we're thinking, boy, we probably ought to head back. But just kind of taking it in. And all of a sudden I just got this really weird feeling like, man, if I was in brown bear country, I would say we're being watched by something that's thinking not good thoughts, or thinking, yes, Italian food, I don't know. It was eerie nonetheless. And I kind of just did one of those things, like the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I said something to Dave. And about that time, we're probably from the shoreline, we're probably about from here to not quite the middle of the street. So probably about 25 yards from the edge of the trees. And they're small pine trees up there. They're not huge. And yet they have, like, we have willows, but they're like an alder tree, and they're more bushy and whatever. It's springtime, so things are turning green, and mosquitoes aren't too bad yet. They're starting to get active, but all of a sudden, this creature let out I want to call it a blood-curdling, growling, howling, scream, yell that outdid two men's lungs breath. I mean, it was intense. And I'm pretty good at determining sound, hunting elk, hunting turkeys, whatever. I pick out sound in the direction, and I'm looking up in the tree line, and I'm looking up off the shoreline, would be about 8 feet-ish. Not a lot to compare to, just because the trees are so small, but I'm going, looking at where a man would stand, and this thing was a good 3 feet over where the sound is resonating from. And it was so intense that it actually, that time of night in Canada, I've seen it multiple times, in a lot of northern areas, that the water just turns to glass. It looks just like mercury, just perfectly still. And it with such intensity in the volume from its voice, it actually caused sound ripples, and they came right at us at the boat. And I'm watching this, listen, and look over at Dave, and I mean, his eyes are as big as silver dollars. I know mine were as big as that, every bit as big. No sidearms, no guns. We're in Canada, and we have little fillet knives, And I know if I had a gun of any kind, if it had been a .22, I would have gone. I'm the type of person that has to know what that was. It's bugged me for 25 years. What in the world was that thing? I have heard moose, I have heard mountain lion, I've heard elk, bear, you name it in North America. I've heard every animal from its mating call to a dying distress call to a bear right before it dies, it gives out a death cry. There is not an animal that I know of that has a set of lungs that big that can pipe out that volume of sound that you could feel. I almost like when you shoot a pistol in an indoor range, you can feel the vibration on your face. Now, it wasn't that powerful, but I could feel it, and so could Dave. And both of us looked at each other at the exact same moment and said, "What was that?" And neither one of us didn't even respond. We were both speechless. The sound was undescribable. I can mimic just about any animal, from a bird to a turkey to a mountain lion screaming, a wolf howl, coyote. I use a lot of my mouth for different calls. I've called multiple elk in with just my voice. There's no way I can mimic what I heard. I've played that sound in my head 1,000 times. And I think maybe some great, like paparazzi, or however you say his name, that's got his lungs developed for screaming something out in a long, dude, this thing would have surpassed that. It was unreal. And, that eeriness was intensified. And it was, I've been in places in Alaska hunting moose, and all of a sudden I just feel like something's watching me, and I'll turn and look, and from me to you there would be a little, like a ferret or something, not a ferret, a fisher sitting on a branch looking at me. You kind of start to develop that natural, I don't know, hunter instinct, I guess. I don't know what it is for sure, but I mean, that's exactly where I felt that creepiness coming from. And that's where the sound came from. Not expecting any noise, not expecting anything. It was so cool and quiet, deafening quiet before it. It was almost eerie, because there wasn't a bird, there wasn't a cricket, there wasn't nothing, not a fish splashing, nothing. And all of a sudden that thing let out a blood-curdling scream that was so deafening, it did almost hurt your ears. It was unreal. I wished it would have shown itself. Man, at the same time, I'm glad it didn't show itself. I had nothing to defend myself but a fillet knife, and I would have gone, don't come any closer, I'll use it, I don't know. But Dave reaches down for the motor, and he's a big guy. He's like ex-football player, linebacker, monster dude, and he grabbed that little ripcord and about ripped the motor off when it didn't start. And I'm like, don't break the motor, And he finally gets it started, and we're already facing out the cove, and we took off out of that cove. And I mean, that was probably the longest 45 minutes of that I probably ever experienced. It seemed like it was 3 times that long. It's getting darker and darker and darker. And I know it's like, are we ever going to get to that dock again? I know this thing can't catch us. We're going way too fast. The force is too dense. But the sound that thing made, it was not a coyote sense where it's just howling to let other coyotes know I'm around. It's the sound and the tone to me was threatening, very domineering, and
sending a clear message.
Yeah, it would have been a bad. I probably, if I had had a gun, I probably wouldn't be here telling you the story today because it'd been one of those. The guy just disappeared. We don't know what happened to him, but and he would have had Italian food that night. If they eat meat, I have no idea. But to me, immediately, as we talked about it later that night, I mean, it had to be what we don't know. And my only thought, and I said, guys, come on, if we just encounter like a Sasquatch, Bigfoot thing, and Dave goes, well, what the heck else would it be? I'm like, I don't know, but I can't say that's what it was because I never saw it. I can tell you it's nothing that I know of in any big game animal in North America. And so what else could it be? It's that full fun mystery that one day I hope to go back up there. And the ground up there has got so much of the muskeg and mossy stuff that impossible to track anything. I mean, unless it stepped in a mud puddle. But man, it was so close that I think with the boat and we'd had the right situation, we probably could have maybe seen something. But it is thick. As soon as you get into that off the water, it's just so thick and dense. So it has been a topic of many campfire stories for years and years and years, and sharing it with people, and as I did with Glenn here a couple days ago, and one of my former guys I worked with, his son is a Bigfoot nut, and he just eats and sleeps it. He's 13. And I told his mom on graduation, I said, you pay for the trip? I said, we'll go. She goes, not without me. She goes, I want to go. I'm like, okay. So maybe I'll get back into that North Country one of these days. So that's my story that I encountered of an unexplainable, to this day, there's times I wish I would have just gone to the shore even with just a fillet knife. But I hate not knowing. I'm the type of guy, when I'm fishing, I always got to go around that other bend. I have to see. I climb a mountain to go. I want to see what's in the next ridge. I'm not, sits back and goes, ooh, that scares me. No, it intrigued me. There was a fear factor with it. There was a, if there's a butt pucker, it was on a scale from 1 to 5. I've worked commercial high rises on some pretty windy days and swinging stages, and those are 5s, and this was probably a good 4. So yeah, and otherwise bears, I've been from me to you, full draw to black bear looking at me going, one of us or both of us today, and have about a 2 pucker factor, So, but it was definitely a, I hope not a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but more so than I ever expected. Not even thinking about anything like that, and to have something like that happen.